Hi everybody, it's Alisamurray here. I'm hanging out today with one of my dear friends, Babette. Thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you so much for having
Yeah,
me.
talk to me. We've been doing all kinds of talking before we got on this set
We
about
did.
beauty and about aging and about influencing and about people maybe not being so nice with the influencing. And you and I are both in the eye of the public. I'm out there doing my thing with the channel. I'm out there doing my thing with the photography. I've been entrepreneuring for, gosh, 30 years, right? And I don't think that very many people have had the balls, I'll say stuff to me that would be ugly. But I'm sure there's been a lot of snickers behind the closed door. Um, and you and I were talking about that, women and how we are seen, and in a lot of ways, we have many years. I remember back when I was a child and back whenever I was a young married person, the comment was made that I should not leave the house without my face put on. And then, of course, I'm out shooting babies, and babies don't like to have makeup and all that perfume and all that stuff on. So I went for years without wearing a stitch of makeup, and people that were my friends were like, man, I can't believe you're at this restaurant and you don't have any makeup on. I'm like, Brian doesn't care. The babies don't care. And if the babies and Brian don't care, there's not anybody else I need to be worried about. Right?
So for me, being in the makeup industry for so long, and as I got older, I worked for a skincare line, and I was like, it's all about the skin. So I'd go in with like not even this much makeup, and they'd be like, and you're like, it's about the skin and my comfort level. And I really struggled a little bit because you had aging women like, why do all these young girls look so beat, and they're beautiful? I was like, that's like 2 hours in the morning. I don't really have that time. And so, but I think you get to an age where you feel invisible. And you look around at like TV or magazines, and there's no one like, I like to joke that the really person I see the most is Caitlyn Jenner.
Isn't that funny?
Where that was for a long time, that was, older, whatever. Now, again, I don't really do magazines so much anymore, but when you go into Sephora or something, you're just bombarded with these young images. And again, I'm all for that, that was my career. But I think as you get older, you become self-conscious in a different way, like wrinkles or, whatever. But I also think, where's my purpose? Like, at 56, almost 57, having been laid off, like, okay, what am I going to do next?
Right. And a lot of people have felt that. A lot of people, and that's not just because of the pandemic. That happens anyway.
Right.
I've got many friends who were in television who were bumped. They got to that age where they got bumped. It wasn't because they weren't qualified. In fact, they were more qualified than anybody else. But there was a certain look that they wanted, and it was all about the look. More about the look than what was going on behind the brain, in the eyes, behind the eyes and the brain. And that's unfortunate. And for me, it's also been a weird observation that men can do it and we can't. And I've always said to be, I've been married for 30 years, I've always said to be, just because I have a vagina does not mean that I have to vacuum.
Right.
Okay? There's a little rule in this house that works real well. And I'm not the toilet cleaner. I'm not the litter cleaner. I'm not the vacuum cleaner. That's not me. I will cook. Oh my God, I love to cook. And y'all know I do. And I will grow things. But I am not going to clean messes just because I happen to be the one that's the female in this particular union. I'm just not doing it. And so we've had to put in place people to take care of that.
Right.
Because I'm not going to do it.
Right. And I think, now there aren't defined gender roles. I think when we were growing up, especially in the South,
For sure.
you did this, I went to college to find a husband or, whatever. And those were just expected. And I still see some of that, but it's nice to know that, I have tons of friends who are single, late 40s, and they're super happy, where before people would be like, oh, and even my daughter, they decided not to have children, and she's 37, and the idea, people ask her, well, why not? And her answer is, it's just our choice, and that she's able to have that choice, even though some people are like, oh, what's wrong? So
Well, it's interesting too to think there's something wrong. I mean, honestly, when we watch Jay Leno, me and B, we watch a lot of stuff. We watch a lot of stuff that we each like, and some stuff I don't like as much as he does, and some stuff he doesn't like as much as I do. But that's our time together that we're not talking business. And when we talk about Jay, Jay's got a lot of money. Now, he would have had a lot of money anyway because of what Jay's done. But he has a lot of money. The reason why he's got a lot more money is because he didn't have kids. And you have a lot more to do, freedom to live a life without that. I mean, not that children don't bring a beautiful enrichment to the universe, and you are sorry that you did that. You're not. I mean, people that are parents, and of course I love mine and you love yours, and it is what it is. But to choose to not do that is a legitimate choice.
Yep, absolutely. And to choose to be single or not single, that's a legitimate choice too.
Yeah.
And I think as a feminist, an essential feminist, but that, you respect what other women want to do.
Yeah.
There's no box,
No.
and I really, think that, and my daughter has really shown that to me, which was not the way I was brought up.
Right.
But you're super happy that,
Yeah, I mean, it's today's time that we live in is so different and unique for us as women. I mean, and I don't even normally box us into the two categories. It's just different for people in general.
Right.
Like, it's different for James Edward. I mean, this whole Me Too stuff, and he's never held a hand or kissed a girl or asked a girl out, and we're 18, right? He's got his own company, but he's never even gone on a date.
Right. Nothing wrong with that.
And nothing wrong with that, but like the navigation through this weirdness of what's been blanketed over society creates a stir. It creates an angst.
Yep.
Right? And so I wrote about that in my column. I wrote about it to him in my column.
Nice.
It was like, raising a young man. It's hard to help them navigate that world, because with us it was very strict.
Right.
It was very clear what you were to do, what you were to
Not
say,
to,
what you
right.
were not to do, and how you were supposed to look.
Right.
And I sometimes go to church, not that we've been to church in a minute, but you and I were both raised Southern Baptist.
We were.
And you dressed for church.
You would.
You didn't
I
walk in.
still have my slip on. Sorry. I have a slip. That's how you know I'm old. Because I used to wear my slip. My daddy would used to say, "Do you have your slip on?"
Yeah.
And so, that's a slip you wear when you wear a dress.
Right. Otherwise, everybody can see everything.
Exactly.
All the way to Georgia.
But that's the thing. Like, when you were going to church, you
Right.
were dressed a certain way. And I even know now, like, if I'm visiting friends and they want to go to church, it's jeans. And
It's crazy.
It took me a minute to, like, get out of that, like, what I was reared to, like, and it was like freeing, but it was also like,
Oh, I have not succumbed to it, my love. I have not succumbed to it. There's talk about me, I'm sure, in whispers. When I go, I actually made fascinators with birds and flowers and
for sure
craziness. I'm like, got up in that art room and made a whole bunch of cool stuff, and started the channel actually wearing a few of them. I've just been lazy because I've been so busy doing other things. It's like, oh, okay, I got makeup on. That's it.
Right.
Sometimes I don't even
That's
have
the goal of the
makeup
day.
on, and I'm in the
Exactly.
kitchen cooking, and it's like, I don't even care. Just turn on the mic. Let's just roll
Right.
with it. But I would walk into church with, dress, heels, fascinator, jewelry, and everybody around me wearing what they would have worn Monday through Friday.
Right.
Maybe even on a Saturday afternoon. And, I just feel like, for me, it's an opportunity to really feel special. You're
Right.
spending the day with the Lord. It's a day
Right.
that you should be respectful, and being part of respect to me was my rearment was to dress up.
Right. And I think you hit the nail on the head, respect, because I think that respectful in dress and manners, and especially when you're entering a church, not saying that you can't be that way when you're wearing jeans, but it also leads me to think about how people respect themselves, like in dress. And I know I'm guilty. I've been living in, sweats or whatever. And now that I'm, able to get out a little more, it's
Right.
like, respect yourself, Babs. Like, put jeans on or put a dress on, where you can gain that sort of.
It changes the way that you walk.
Yeah, absolutely.
It changes the way that you feel.
Yes.
If I rolled out of bed, guys, and didn't put my wig on my head, y'all would not be seeing Auntie A.
Right.
In fact, I even had a child that came to see me, and I had just decided to take the day, not recently, it's probably been 10 years ago, because I've worn this wig since 1995. This is the look I've had for a long time. This
It's
is
great.
just my look. And I've teased B, whenever it's time to go gray, which we're going to talk about in a minute, I'm going to order my little buns in that bright white, gorgeous grayish whatever, and just go in and have Uncle Mark fix it and then snap it on, and it'll be white, and I'll be Mrs. Claus.
There you go.
That's what I'll look like, is Mrs. Claus. And he already looks like Santa Claus, so we'll be good to go. But, you know, the thing that's so interesting to me is that people, they don't realize what a difference it makes. Like, if you get up and you get dressed and you actually make that effort, you're on.
Right.
And the little kid came in, and I don't remember what I was doing. I was probably in the garden, maybe. I don't know. But she came to see me, and normally they jump out of the car and they run and give me a hug, and we're ready to take pictures. And that, you know, she knows what Auntie A looks like. And when I did not have that wig on, she started crying.
Oh, no. And
I finally realized, I said, hold on a minute, I know what the problem is. And I came back in the house, put my wig on, and went back. And then she was like, oh, it's Auntie A. There was such a connection to me with the way that I look and present myself to the world, that even a 3-year-old was affected by it. You know, it's just really interesting that it does matter.
So I suffer from depression, which, you know, first thing to say, hey, it's okay. But I find that in days that are blue or black, depending on, you know, that if I make that effort to, you know, get out of my pajamas or put, you know, that is an instant mood lifter. And, you know, that way I can just feel, you know, I don't know what's going on with me today, but at least I have a presence of, like, you know, that my boyfriend calls, are you going to wear spandex and lycra today? You're like, no.
Isn't that funny?
Yes, it's very funny.
That's funny. So talk to me. You've begun a journey through just not that long ago where you have had connection with women who are going through this idea of embracing going gray. And the embracement of that so revealed in different ways. Like some are going to the hair salon like you and I would do, and you've done, and just here it is. One day you're this, the next day you're that, and that's the end of that. And I can't handle it when I see people with roots. I mean, I'm already texting Uncle Mark, there's a 1/4 of an inch, I need to get in.
Right.
And so I will never be the one that could sit through this process.
Right.
I couldn't do it. There's no way I could do it.
You know, it's amazing. And like, I'm so amazed by women who choose that route, you know, but it's just the journey of, I think, you know, finally embracing who you are. And this is like the last, you know, like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it, you know, grow it out naturally. And just to what they read or what they say and how you read it, it's really interesting. And it's been a really great place for me to be, because you realize that your struggle, you know, with your gray hair or your age, you know, that there's a community there. And, you know, that when you feel like somebody says, oh, well, you look old, that you remember, oh, so-and-so, I read that about that and what their response was. And then you can just say, oh, well, thanks very much, you know. Or
you can say, bless your heart.
Bless your heart, right? So if you know you're in Texas and somebody says, bless your heart, yeah.
Yeah, it is what it is.
Right. But I said it's a great community, and, you know, just reading about some of the struggles, like personal, because I think, again, it's a difficult time. I mean, we were speaking about, you feel like you're invisible, you know, and that you're not valued anymore, and yet you have all this rich experience and you're able to like share, but somehow, some way, nobody wants to hear that. And it's difficult for me too, because I had a grandmother who I wanted to know everything from, you know, just from where, you know, going to church, how she had her foundations and, you know, and her gloves, and I really wanted to, you know, and to the day she passed away, I was always like, tell me more. And I think that it's a hard process, but I think it's also like just accepting yourself. Like, you know, I have a lot to offer. And
you know, the thing too that's interesting for me, and this may just be my own personal experience as a solitary experience, but, you know, my mother was hit and killed by a train when she was 31 years old. She's buried with a beautiful mahogany Albany wig, very much similar to the way I wear my hair. She obviously died very young. I never saw her age, ever. Like, I never saw that. It never happened, because it didn't happen. But Granny and Nana both were very matriarchal women who raised me, both my mother's mother and my daddy's mother. And Nana lived with us my whole life. And Nana was white gray by the time I was old enough to know what hair, gray hair, right? Like I grew up with her. And there was never any discussion about this. There was not any discussion about Nana had rouge and Nana had her lipstick, and she never let it eyeshadow on her. There was never any color on her eyes, she would say. That was for women of the night.
Yes.
And
when I was a redhead, my grandmother said, you know, when I was growing up, only loose women had red hair, and which is funny because then my younger sister and my sister-in-law, we were all like, and so it was just this big joke, like, yeah, you know.
Funny.
I know, right?
But Nana and Granny both. I mean, like, it was never a fuss. It was never discussed. There was never any conversations of plastic surgery or anything like that at all. Never. It just didn't happen. It just didn't happen. And I think that, I remember there was a comment, not a comment, it was some sort of it may have been a comment, family reunion or something had happened, and I look identical to my mother. I'm like, I am scarily that kid that is like the carbon copy of the mother, and which has been a very difficult role to fill for me individually, because that's a lot to look up to. It's a lot to have to live up to. And when people die young and they die after having done a lot in the little bit that God gave them, there's a big shoes to fill, right? They're still talking about her, and she's been dead for what, 42 years. So it's not, you know, it's not easy. But it's interesting because I see myself in the mirror and I see me, right? I see now me. And I remember the pivotal point when I turned 32. It was like all these years I had looked just like my mama, and then I now have lived longer than my mama.
Got it.
And now I'm living my life as what mother may have looked like. But these are my shoes to fill. And so for the first 31 years, it was all about, every time anybody saw me, oh my God, you look just like, oh my God, da da da. And so it's been kind of interesting with that, because that's a different sort of dichotomy of emotions and stuff going on. And I'm uber positive about the universe, which is, you know, one of the things that people are like, I can't believe you're not mad or angry about whatever happens. It doesn't even matter what it is. Just name whatever happens, and life happens, right? My publicist says, you always seem to figure out how to spin that shit back to sweet. That's the beauty of you. You just, it doesn't matter what it is. It could be really bad. It could be not so bad. You still figure out a way to, like, you just turn it back around. And I'm like, well, I don't know any other way to be. That's just who I am, and that's how I respond to the world. And so anyway, but I think it's interesting what you're getting to do now, and kind of what I'm getting ready to do too, is people are coming to us. They're attracted to us because we're in social media. We're in the public in a way that's different from before, right? And you're getting offers to showcase different products. I'm getting offers to showcase less sexy products. I'm showcasing compost.
There you go.
And manure and gravel and stone. And I'm happy to do that because it helps me tremendously to do that. My garden is where I love to be. But you're really getting a cool opportunity here and there. Talk about some of that stuff, because you were doing mascara.
You know, it's funny. Since I'm still feeling my way around, you know, the people who do makeup like all the time, they're super popular. And then there's people who do hair that are super popular, and clothes. So I haven't really figured out, you know, my niche, because I tend to just be more thoughtful. Like, the appearance is, you know, external doesn't match the internal. You know, I mean, there are plenty of ugly, pretty people, right? For sure. And so I think for me, it's just like enjoying the journey, listening to what people say, sharing like my transition from, you know, gray or red to gray. And then now I'm gonna, I competed in a 2-figure competitions, one when I was 40, one when I was 50. And so I'm getting ready to just start training early, you know, because 60's coming, and I think I really, you know, want to do that again. But again, having support from this group, like, you know, who struggle with menopause or, you know, whatever, and that's a really, you know, nice thing as well. So I like to think that I'm giving back, you know, as much as, like, you know, posting pictures of my dog, or, you know, hey, we shot this look in the studio. She's got a cute little puppy too. That in that photo, or in what you write about it, that caption, is that you really realize that, you know, all this is smoke and mirrors, right?
And that's the thing. I mean, like, that's the bottom line. I told this to James Everett. We were talking about money, and, you know, he's 18 and he's getting ready to graduate, and it's all about that, right? But it's not all about that. You know, and I had a conversation with somebody else, I don't even remember who it was, on a different Martini Talk. I've made a lot of money. I made more money as a photographer than any photographer that I even know, except for maybe Annie Leibovitz. You know what I mean?
Yep,
I mean, I've been on every station. I've done all this stuff to give back to the community with cancer, kids cancer, breast cancer. I've got L&D wings named after me. I've done all that. I've been on multiple magazine covers multiple times. It doesn't even, written stories about me, whatever. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, if you're not happy, right there, in that core happy, doesn't make any difference. You know, you can make all the ding dang money in the world and be like Ebenezer Scrooge. And so I'm trying to teach him that lesson, is that, you know, now this last 50, this back 50 that I've got to look forward to, is really going to be spent doing stuff I like to do.
And we spoke about that. Like, for me, one day, I just didn't want to do makeup anymore. You know, it was just one day where, after being on sets and brides, and you're like, you know, I really don't want to do this anymore. And so, you know, I segued into being a vendor rep. And I was let go in October, and now I think, you know, that was a blessing, because you're not really sure you want to do that anymore. It was fun, don't get me wrong. Lots of friends, lots of amazing women. But I think this is the idea of, like, I don't belong in this environment anymore. Like, this doesn't excite me. What excites me is talking to women like my age or who have concerns about, you know, that excites me, but not like helping somebody pick out a lipstick anymore.
No.
You know, like, I don't want to do that anymore. Right.
Yeah, and I mean, and as much as I love my families and will continue, because they're worried. I mean, a few of them, like, they're like, oh God, what is happening here? Because, you know, I'm like, no. You don't have to worry. You really don't. Like, I will photograph your babies until they graduate. I will photograph the weddings. I will take care of any more babies that you decide to bring into the world. That's cool and groovy, because you're part of my family and you're already here. And I've truly treated my clients like they're my family. And for those that are not like that, and don't treat me like that, and don't see what's happening in my own transformation, then we don't need to be together. And at this point, my attitude was, I need to shoot everybody. And now it's, I only need to shoot these that love me, and know me, and trust me. And from that group, I'm still booking travel. I'm still selling houses. I'm still writing columns. I'm still helping. But a lot of part of what I'm doing now, through this channel, through this medium, really, is helping people figure out what their it is. Their passion. Like, what is it that they really want to do? Because I mean, I was behind the camera for all these years, and every time I go do live TV, I would get my stomach all in knots, and I would freak out, because it was live, right? But when I figured out that this iPhone is not live, and I'm in complete and total control of it in terms of the editing, there's no fear anymore about taking a video, right? That's over. Like, now it's just a matter of connecting with people and trying to have them have a platform to share what they want to do and who they need to meet or help, and for me to share with them that journey, like, help them find that journey. You know, because everybody is in a different place. And it always happens when they're in their youth, you know, they're all about this money stuff. If I can get enough people who are in their 20s to figure out that that's not what life is about, and get them on the right path to do some really cool stuff, they've got so much more leg room than I have now, because it took me a minute.
Takes me a minute.
Took us both a minute.
And I'm sure there'll be many minutes, you know, to come. But I wanted to say one thing about, you know, social media too. So you post a picture and people are like, oh, you look great, or, you know, and it's just this thing, but, you know, they don't know backstory. You know, I used to be super overweight, you know, married 3 times. I mean, they just think that
it's this one thing.
Yes, and that your life must be perfect or whatever, and you're like, no, it's not, you know. And I'm very open about depression and mental health. My nephew took his life 4 years ago with like a sort of mental health struggle, so that's super important to me. And you know, I'm not shy about it. You know, I'm not going to say, hey, you know, but the idea is, you know, if something's mentioned or something, I'm perfectly happy, you know. And if you don't want to hear my experience, that's great, but I can tell you, you know, when I had a meltdown, it was bad. And that to come back from that, it's just not always easy. But again, the idea of that, it's a picture, but it doesn't really the viewer doesn't really know that backstory.
They don't. And what's interesting too is that it's like my publicist says, she goes, everybody from the outside looking in thinks that you are living this fairy tale magical life. You have a magical life. You're an artist. You've got all these magical things. Magical spaces to do Martini Talks, and magical spaces to do cooking, and magical garden, and magical. They don't see the struggle, and the struggle is real, but it's not necessary, I feel like, to discuss, because that's negative, and I'm positive.
Right.
And so my friends, that watch me will say, well, what's going on? And I'll give them exactly what's going on, right? Because they need to know what's going on. And for me, there's a funny story. It was like probably, I don't even know. The kids were teenagers. Well, James Edwards still is. But my married children, my daughter and her husband were teenagers. And we were at church one Sunday, and somebody came up to me, and my sister was with me and her kids. And we had like the whole pew. And somebody came up and asked me where one of the kids was. And I just went, blah, 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 and I went, because stuff was going on that didn't need to be going on, but I had no control over it. And he just looked at me like this, and Elizabeth patted his hand on the pew, and she said, don't you know my sister? If you ask her, she's going to tell you.
Absolutely.
Right? So maybe that's what needs to happen on social media, is that people need to comment and say, hey, because if you ask me, I'll tell you what's going on. And it may not be what you think it is.
Right. And there's no reason to sugarcoat it, especially like you get, for me, it's like, your cheeks have been done or your lips have been done. And you're like, no. And let me tell you stories about growing up in New Orleans as a teenager with like full lips. It wasn't always pleasant, And so now you have these young girls injecting, everything, Botox in their 20s. And, you're like, no. And I mean, I have been fortunate that, I had great genes, but it's really, again, in that notion of, well, you've had this done or this done, and you're like, no. And just being who I am, and not wanting to be judged. And I think that since I've been away outside of cosmetics, it's been a little bit freeing,
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Because being in the beauty industry, that's all it is.
Mm-hmm. It is.
It's like, what's the perfect lipstick, the perfect blush, the perfect foundation.
Yeah. And this product is coming out.
And this is da-da-da, and peptide this, and hydraulic that, and da-da-da-da-dee.
Yep. And there's so much to choose from. I mean, even as, being in the field for such a long time, there's so much to choose from. And you're trying to, being an esthetician, I like read up on that. But, when you're trying to make a recommendation and this woman or gentleman is like way overwhelmed, you've got to start from a place of like, and then, pull them in. But it's also, new palette here is $48. And I think too that I found like, oh, if you just had this lipstick, or people feel that way. Oh, if I have this lipstick, my life is going to be better.
It's crazy.
And you're like, having been there and come through the other side, no, it's not. You're going to just have a lipstick in your drawer that you might wear 3 times and, be done with it. So,
I just recommend, love that red. All of y'all write that down, Revlon. Nana wore it for years. I have that, and Cherries in the Snow.
Cherries in the Snow, and Mirrored Mauve. Mirrored Mauve. I don't know if they make that anymore.
I don't know if they do either. I've never had that, because I've always been a red girl. I've always, whenever I wear my lipstick, it's bright on. That's one thing I have missed, I must say, with this mask stuff, is because I usually have my lipstick on and mascara. That's kind of the bare minimum before I walk out the ding-dang door. And when you put on a lipstick and then you throw a mask on, you end up with a clown face. You got lipstick every which way all over the place. So.
It's funny, though, because like I'll wear a gloss because I feel like even if it might stick or something, like it just feels weird not to have something on my lip, even, and I also think under my mask, I tend to be happy and smile. And, when you were smiling, or, you hope that people are seeing your eyes.
I started winking at people.
There you go.
Yeah, I started winking. I wrote about that in my column a couple of months ago. Said, for those of you who are trying to figure out what to do in this communication thing. For me, I'm a big hugger.
Right.
And I'm used to people stopping me in the grocery store. They've read my column and they want to take a picture with me. I'm used to that type of stuff. And people are like elbow bumping me and we can't smile. And I'm like winking. I'm winking. Good. I'm making sure that they understand that winking is really a great big smile underneath that mask.
But to just like go out and like, I was like a brow girl and lips. And so just knowing that I can do my brows and just have a little lip on that under that mask, which is uncomfortable sometimes. But, you're like, I can go out, and do that. But I also think it's been a lesson too of like really accepting yourselves, like, because, when I was going to go back into store, having not worn makeup for such almost a year, I was like, I really don't feel like that right now. And just really trying to say, okay, there's a minimum standard that you want to have in store, but the bare minimum. You know?
Exactly.
And then we were in North Carolina, and my boyfriend's sister works at a medical center, and she wasn't allowed to have any makeup under the mask. She could only do eyes.
Oh.
And I thought, well, that's interesting.
That is
interesting. Like no foundation, no lipstick, no anything. It was just about the eyes. And I thought, that's really interesting. But, it's, I think COVID has changed the beauty industry.
For sure.
And people are more aware of skin and color. Everybody still will have color, but I think the idea of not being able to present yourself in that way, being made up. I know a lot of people who are like, no, I don't want to go back to that,
Yeah.
Sort of like we talked about with you and photography and me, and like it gets to a point where this does not make me happy anymore.
No, and I mean, I like to get up and get dressed, and I will, and I've gotten up and gotten more makeup on in the past year because of the channel.
Right.
Right, because I definitely feel like it looks better. I look better on film
right.
with something.
Right.
And I see how washed out I am when I'm not with anything. But that said, if I'm doing a DIY or if I'm out in the yard and I'm trying to show you how to propagate orchids or have sex, for lack of a better word, with the tomatoes and cucumbers that are not getting pollination, whatever, I don't need to have on a full face of makeup. It makes no damn sense. And if you're watching my channel and you're seeing me in the garden, but then you're seeing me in the kitchen, then you're seeing me on a Martini Talk, you know what I look like.
Right. Right.
And I've never cared.
Right.
I mean, in fact, I forgot. We were someplace. I think I was shooting a magazine. And some woman who was a real hootie tootie, she's not even alive anymore, she came up to me, and I had my assistant with me at the time, which was a really nice person that was holding my bag and holding my cameras and clearly helping me get set up for the shoot. And obviously I was the photographer, right? It was not like it was some crazy, I'm just standing around wild person in the back scene or whatever. And she came over to me and she's like, looked me up and looked me down, and she goes, "Who are you?" And my what came out of my mouth was my grandmother. In that instant, it was like it came immediately out of my mouth without even me even thinking. It just flew out of my mouth. And I said to her, "If you don't know who I am, then you're not supposed to know me."
Oh, nice.
And so that's kind of how I feel about the whole thing.
Right.
People are so scared in the community of videography for YouTube.
Right.
They're scared to push go. They're scared to press record and put it out there. They're scared of people's comments.
Exactly.
And I think what? I have not had anybody be crappy. And I don't know if it's just good luck or maybe they're scared of what I might say back, because if you do know me, I'm pretty, when it comes back to the back stuff.
We just learned to delete. But it was this really weird thing. I wore these earrings, and I forgot where we was. We were at some wedding or something, and this woman said, "I hope you're enjoying your recycled earrings." And I'm like, "Who are you?" Excuse me. I said, "I just received these." And then in another comment, she said something about, "I'm sure he just calls you baby because, he has to keep all his women straight." And I finally was like, "What? You don't even know me." And so I just deleted and blocked. And I think, in that community too, there are lots of creepers, no question, you know.
For sure.
And you just learned to not, not really pay attention.
Yeah.
And then but most of the comments are positive, and
yeah, I mean, generally speaking, people like to lift each other up. There's always going to be people that are crappy.
Right.
But it's like Nana said, you don't let one bad apple spoil the whole barrel.
Right.
Don't let that happen.
Right. And I think I would rather connect. I mean, oh, how many followers do you have? And you're like, okay, of course. But it's also to connect to, I can go on and I know this woman lives in Florida and this woman lives in Waco and this woman lives in Paris. And so, that's really, I love that. And in fact, we're going to a wedding in Waco in May, and I'm going to meet this woman, one of the Silver sisters, and I'm super excited about it. I said, "Hey, do you want to meet?" And she's like, "Absolutely." So, encouraging that on a really personal level. Mm-hmm. So like I said, you always look at that number and you want, more, but then you have to step back and say those numbers are, you can buy followers, right?
You sure can.
Right. So,
And I don't have any that I've bought.
No, me neither.
And I don't want it.
Yep, absolutely.
I don't want it. I mean, like, honestly, if this was a situation where I was having to make money doing it, then that might have been the case 15, 20 years ago.
Right.
This is pure joy.
It is, isn't it?
All I'm doing is just having fun.
Yep.
And if it happens to turn out that I end up making money at it, that's wonderful and lovely. And if it doesn't, I could care less.
Right, right.
Because I'm not in a position where I have to worry about that, thank the Lord.
Right.
I'm able to do
what you want to do.
what I want to do and give back my time and expertise as an entrepreneur to help people, or just to have a great conversation with you.
Right. I think too, the idea of when we talk about liking yourself, that somebody likes you or you get a follower, that doesn't determine your worth.
No.
And I think the thing like, oh, well, people don't like me or whatever. And I just had to learn, like, it doesn't matter. You're putting yourself that because you like it.
And I think, what, Babette, I think part of the reason why that has not been an issue for me, and for my peeps in North Carolina, you'll really resonate with this. I always beat to my own drum. I played trombone, was the only girl. I was kind of a little rebel. I wore my mother's clothes.
Nice.
Kind of creeped people out because she was dead and I was wearing mother's clothes. I had my own personal style. I never had to fit in. If you were my friend, we were true friends. I never fitted into any of that little cliche. I was not a part of that group of people that did that.
Right.
And it's the similarity of the people that do that in high school and middle school that are the ones that are doing that on social media.
Right.
And because I've removed myself way long ago from any of that, and then it didn't even matter. I mean, like if you didn't like what I had to say, or you didn't like what I was wearing or my shoes or whatever was going on that day with my clothes or whatever, I didn't care.
Right.
But there were girls, I knew girls.
Of course.
That it was like every day was a big struggle. Is this
Right.
shirt okay? Should I wear this? Or would my friend think that this is bad? I'm sorry. Never, ever has that happened to me.
And I think I'm like you. Like, I can go out with no makeup and feel perfectly comfortable. And friends are like, oh, you look much better with makeup. And you're like, no, I look like me with makeup on. So, and that was like, I had that instilled from my mom, where like, oh, you should always have makeup on. And it's very, like I said, it's like, hey, this is who I am, take it or leave it, And I think that's a gift of aging.
It is.
That as you get older, you realize that, people's opinions really, they're not living your life.
Well, my philosophy is that if I'm not feeding you, and then I'm going to not say the word, because you know what the word is, you, Brian, I don't care. There's just the two things I have to be concerned with of people that love me and are happy with me.
Right.
Feeding the ones I'm feeding, and the only one that and that's it.
Yep, absolutely.
And the rest of the world doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, it's who I'm putting my head on the pillow with at night.
Exactly.
Who I've created a life with, who I've created babies with,
right.
Who I'm supporting the babies and taking care of, making sure they've got what they need in their adulthoods, will always, because that's what parents do.
I love that, creating a life. Like, that's really been something that for me is, finding a good partner, and like, you're creating this life together. And it could be simple, like he cooks and I do the dishes, but in that sort of like, we're creating something, like, I don't really know, and like, I don't have the backstory of being married 30 years. My sisters and brothers have, but just knowing that, wow, and what are you going to do next to continue that creation? It's so lovely. It's
just a rare thing. It honestly is rare. We were at Home Depot, no, we were at Lowe's the other day working on a project, and there was this fart sitting over there in the corner. And of course we were together, because Brian and I are always together. And we were in there getting ready to check out. And the client that was checking us out has been with me for years too. And she's recently divorced. And this other kid came up and he asked me, he said something. And I said, oh, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Either one of us is fine. We're one and the same, basically. And he kind of looked at me weird. He goes, how does that work out? And I said, well, when you've been married for 30 years, you have multiple businesses together, and everything's all together. There's not any, I breathe in, he breathes out.
Right.
That's how we work. We're one person.
Right.
It doesn't matter who you pick to choose. We'll be there, one or the other. And he goes, tell me what you think about how you could live a long and married life happily. And this dude, random dude,
right.
with, not even invited to the conversation, he said, well, I'll tell you what it is. You're either happy or you're right. And I looked at him and I was like, dude, you got it all wrong. That's probably why you ain't happy. Because you got it all wrong. That ain't living a sweet
And
life.
there's no joy in being right sometimes.
That's just stupid.
That's just like
Being right?
Yeah, and if you see somebody, or like with my daughter, like, and I rarely have said I told you so. I don't like that, but like, okay, have you thought about it this way? Thought about it this way? Well, I'm gonna do what I want. Okay, fine. And then it's like, well, Mom, you were right, and you're like, there's no joy in that.
No.
There's just like, I'm glad you had that experience.
Yeah.
I'm glad, and I try to live that every day.
Yeah.
You know what? There's just no, you want to do it? Great, go ahead. Do I have an idea of what might happen to you? Sure. But it's not my place to like really, because I don't, I want people to do well, and I want them to, be the best that they can be. And sometimes you just have to be like, okay, fine. Be supportive in the ways that
you can be.
Right.
That you can be.
Right.
And that's all you can do. And at this point, for us at least, it's wonderful to say that both the children come to us and they want to spend time with us. Mm-hmm. And they are genuinely interested in what we have to say about whatever it is that they're asking us about. Mm-hmm. And we're having conversations about things that are more adult, obviously now, because they are young adults. The parenting never stops.
Right.
It's just a different form of parenting.
Right. But that's a testimony to you that your kids, they want to be around you and they want to be involved, and I think about how fortunate I am. We don't live in the same city, but, we're, involved. We have, maybe I would probably like it to be more, but the idea is that, we speak and we, she's on the job market too. And just, how to encourage her and, because they're younger, and she clearly wants to work, and she's used to being the breadwinner, and how that has affected her. But it's also narrowed her vision of where she wants to be, and talking about that, and so I think that's a great testimony, because I know a lot of friends where their kids are like,
they're gone.
Yeah, they're gone.
They're gone.
Yeah.
And mine texts me, and there's not a morning that goes by that I don't get a text from Victoria Ann. How's your day, gorgeous? What's going on today? Mm-hmm. Well, have you got scheduled to do today? Every week, 2 or 3 times a week, over here for dinner.
Nice.
Granted, I'm the cook, so of course
there
they're
you
coming
go.
for dinner. But, and the same thing with James Edward. I mean, it's just a really wonderful place to be. It's a lot of work to get to that point.
It is a lot of work.
But it's the same thing with marriage.
Right.
And that's the key.
Right.
I mean, that's the thing. I mean, it's just people, I remember over the years, people are like, I cannot believe that you and Brian work together and that you're still married, and I cannot believe it, And I'm like, dude, there's no other way to do it.
Right.
You either are all in.
Right.
Or you're not all in.
Right.
And through all the pandemic, I've seen so many people getting separated.
I know.
And children are just doing crazy stuff.
And I think about that because he worked from home a lot and I was working from home, but how nice it was that we really did grow in a nice way, like, being with each other, learning about each other. And like I said, I know a lot of people who, and I feel bad for them, that I mean, I can see, how it can be a factor, but I think either you went closer or you maybe,
Or you didn't even change. I mean, like,
yes.
For me, the only thing is Brian's kind of like, do we really need 62 tomato plants? And I really don't like cabbage. So why are there 3 beds of cabbage in the backyard? Because I really don't like to eat it. Mm-hmm. Why do we have this much cabbage or whatever? And I'm like, dude, we're feeding a lot of people.
Right.
Because that's what's fun now is that when they come see me for photos, the children get to go out and pick and take home.
Yes, beautiful.
My neighbors are able to come over and walk across the gate and come pick what they want.
Nice.
And, Brian was like, can you package up that mint? You should be able to make some money off of that mint. I said, I'm not making any money off that mint. If somebody needs some mint, they can come get some mint or some oregano or whatever.
She met her husband when she was 16. And I look at them and, and again, like that outside, inside, like, oh my gosh. And it's not that they haven't had a struggle, but just that story of like working together and being together. And, it's such a beautiful story. And I'm so happy, that you have that,
Thank you.
But it is a lot of work. It's a lot of work.
It is. And I say this too. I had a dream back whenever we were dating. Brian and I were dating. I had a dream. My mother came to me in the dream and she told me that I was going to marry Brian. And she told me that all the stuff that had happened in my childhood that was bad, because it was pretty awful. Daddy remarried really soon after Mama was killed, and he was not ready for that.
Right.
He had not, he had not processed the death of someone he was in love with.
Right. And it's a common thing.
And, he did. And he had 3 small children, and he just felt like he needed to do that. And he didn't realize that, he would, Nana lived to be 102, and he died at 64 in front of her.
Wow.
Dropped dead right there in the garage in front of his mother. He worried about Nana not being able to take care of his kids. And so he needed to get a wife.
Right.
And he should have gotten something else. But anyway, and that created a whole host of problems, just a lot of problems. And it always does. I've not met anyone who has a stepmother situation occurring that there's not some problem of some sort.
Yep.
It just is what it is. But it's a Cinderella story. And it's like, childhood was really rough. We didn't want for anything because Daddy was a doctor, and we had money, and we had dance, and we had ballet, and we had piano, and we had church, and we had food, and we had all the things that we needed.
You got to go to ballet? I didn't, because good
16 years of ballet.
Well, good Southern Baptist school girls didn't dance.
Well,
I didn't get ballet.
My mother, I'm sorry about that. My mother made sure that she overrid whatever her mother was trying to say. 'Cause I do remember being told we weren't supposed to dance by Granny and Big Daddy, but I remember being taken off to ballet classes and tap dance classes as a 6-year-old. Weekly, I was reporting in to learn how to do that. But, everybody has a season, and my childhood was really not fun. But I learned a lot about how to negotiate and navigate and figure out and understand that there's a lot of people that are just not meant to be happy. They choose that path for themselves, or they want to live in the past where they can't get out. And when you do that to yourself, you can't make them come out of it.
Right. Right.
And so my desire to have the perfect childhood was never going to happen. But my responsibility to have the perfect marriage, I can control.
Right.
Right. I could make the conscious choice to make the decisions together and not go off in one direction and create friction or in another direction and create friction, but to come together so that we make decisions as one body.
Right.
And and I do attribute the whole, I'm not living a fairy tale. For some people maybe I am. But I am living a sweet life.
Right.
And I feel like it's come from being through the trauma.
And you have, you've moved on from that. I mean, I was in a similar situation, and you just decide that, no matter what, I'm going to look for the good in everything and radiate joy, or just be that happy person, which is tough sometimes when you have depression, because everybody thinks you're all right, and nobody says, hey, how are you today, but the idea is that you really can use that experience to, life is hard. And so you really just want to be able to say, you know what, hey, this happened to me, whether you want to think about it or not. And this is how I handle it, So, but and I think that's the biggest thing about aging, that you really know yourself and you can really embrace it. And that just, you bring joy, and that's what I want in my life, not fancy cars. I mean, I'm fine, but it's like, I just want to bring joy, and that's I think that's a really good purpose.
And that's why we get along so well, because we're doing the same thing.
Yep.
Exactly what we want for everybody.
Exactly.
I want to be able to know that whenever you left me, you are better than you were when you came and sat on this couch.
Yep.
Or walked through the garden.
Absolutely.
Or sat at my kitchen table.
And then it's also, too, you want the best people around you. You want people who are positive and, that you're like, oh my gosh, it's so nice to see you, or get texts from you. And that, I think, because there is so much negativity, protecting that, joy, I think you have to sometimes.
It's sacred.
It is sacred.
It's sacred.
It is sacred.
Well, I want to thank you for being here today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. So
we'll
lovely.
Have to do it more often.
Yes, we
will.
will.
You're jaunting all around all the place. I will be soon, guys. I will be soon.
Yes.
Got North Carolina trip coming up. I've got a travel conference in Mexico coming up.
Look at you.
So we are getting ready to be rocking and rolling back to the old ways of doing things.
It's nice to travel these days. We just drove, but we drove a lot of back roads off the interstate. It was so much fun.
Well, I wanted to rent one of those Airstreams, and then I wanted to buy one of them and turn them into a book tour, because I'm writing my biography.
Nice.
Autobiography, I should say.
There you go.
And Brian was like, no. You're not going to do that.
Right.
You're not going to do that.
We have a neighbor who has a Revel, the little, I forgot what to call them, the like Amazon vans, you know,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
that she refurbished or she bought as a camper thing, and I'm like, I want that just to drive around. You know,
I just think it would be so fabulous.
Yes,
You know.
it is.
So, but anyway, well, listen, I hope you guys have found some value. I hope you really have enjoyed the conversation, because I know I did today.
Yes,
It
me
was really
too.
fun. And if you did, do us a favor, like and share. Don't forget to ring that bell, and we'll see you next time when we drop another episode on Martini Talks. Take care.